Hi everybody. Next section of workshop 1 is complexity theory. So, in the world, we are trying to solve some problems that are quite what we call complex. I'm sure you've seen the Sustainable Development Goals before. How are we going to solve climate change? How are we going to solve clean water and sanitation, or poverty, or having a quality education for every person? These are complicated and complex problems. There's a difference between what we call a technical problem and a complex problem, and there's some easy to see differences here. So a technical problem, you can figure out what the problem is, and everybody can usually agree on that. And you can diagnose problems by looking at parts of the problem. Whereas with a complex problem, there are different perspectives on what the problem actually is and what the solutions might be. And it's very difficult to analyze the problem just by looking at certain parts. You need to identify the relationships between the parts of the problem. Solutions for technical problems are usually known or predictable. Cause and effect is quite clear, and we might have unknowns, but they are known unknowns, so we know what we don't know. Whereas with complex problems, we don't know what we don't know yet. There are probably multiple causes that need to be addressed all together to solve the main problem, and usually there's no solution that we already know about to fix the problem. They're usually novel problems, or the combination of problems is novel. You can learn how to fix a technical problem. You can fix it quite quickly, and you can make incremental or transformative changes. Whereas with a complex problem, you have to think differently, act, you have to experiment, and there's a longer state of uncertainty where you don't know whether you fixed the problem or made it worse or done nothing. Approaches for technical problems: a linear diagnosis, problem, action, solve. Whereas complex problems is much more around experimenting, inquiring, observing, evaluating, trying again. So it's much longer term, and it involves more people, and you can't just go back and try again, because once you've tried to fix the problem once, you're in a whole new system. There's a name for some complex problems that was put forward by Ritschl and Weber in 1973, and they called them wicked problems. I really like that name, because it really describes how tricky they are. But wicked problems, similarly to complex problems, but what Ritschl and Weber bring to this is the fact that it's a social issue as well as a technical issue. But they are generally complex problems, so they're closely related. Okay, what is complexity? A complex system is a system that is composed of many interacting parts. It has particular characteristics compared to a linear system. It has non-linearity, so you can't see cause and effect in any simple way. You cannot analyze it by looking at each part and understanding each part. You have to understand how the parts relate to each other and how they affect each other. It has a property of self-organization. Sometimes spontaneous order is created in the complex system without sort of deliberate action or conscious action. It adapts. These systems adapt and evolve. There are feedback loops in complex systems, which we talked about in the last section, and again, tipping points as well, so critical transitions in systems, so they don't stay at equilibrium forever. Here's an example of a complex system. The oceans are absorbing a lot of the heat through acting as a buffer for global warming. And we don't know what's going to happen when the temperature of the oceans raises above a certain level in terms of a tipping point. We already know that it's affecting fish spawning and coral reefs and all sorts of things like that, and water levels, ocean levels. But if it starts to affect the currents, then we don't actually know exactly what's going to happen. It's a complex system and close to a tipping point. So the idea about complex systems is that you can't have simple solutions. So it's quite common in some, especially far right-wing politics, to come up with simple solutions to complex problems, and they're rightly criticized for that. For example, Pauline Hanson will blame immigrants for just about everything. If we don't have any more immigrants, we won't have any more problems. That, of course, is not true. So typically, the higher the level of complexity of the problem, the higher the level of complexity of the solution that you will need to fix it. So solutions to complex problems are often multi-pronged at the same time, which of course makes it hard to know whether what you're doing is helping. However, complexity can be an advantage. I don't know if you remember the Ever Given getting stuck in the Suez Canal during COVID, just when we didn't need it. It showed up the fact that our supply chains are incredibly optimized for just-in-time supply. And it also showed up that our shipping lanes are very reliant on this one narrow shipping lane. And it all fell apart because of a gust of wind. So this is an example of an highly optimized system, optimized for one thing, and that is ships through the Suez just in time. But complex systems based on nature are much more resilient. They may appear more redundant, but they are actually much more resilient and adaptable and flexible than systems that are optimized for one thing, and that might be efficiency, as in this case, or profit. As we see, when we optimize for profit, what we find is that everything else falls apart, like the environment and human rights. This is a really good article. It's on the LMS. I love this article and especially recommend section 1.2, which talks about complex adaptive systems. But this is a paper by Ulbian and McKelvey, and they talk about how complexity is really important for leadership and being understand and to live in, to inhabit places that are uncomfortable and to retain that ambiguity and uncertainty and be able to live there with and avoid making snap decisions or decisions that simply reduce uncertainty but don't actually help to solve the problem. It is a strong desire of humans to reduce uncertainty. It's just like an instinct. But if we can avoid doing it, we can keep our options open. Anyway, it's a great paper. I recommend it. So 7 years ago, Christian Sarkar and Philip Kotler put together this map of wicked problems in the world and showing how all of the wicked problems themselves are interconnected. And their 7 wicked problems were income inequality, extremism, war, migration, climate collapse, health, and something else down the bottom that's covered up by my face. Anyway, and then they've got related other problems like poverty, privatization, tax avoidance, crime, racism, and they carried on and they mapped all these wicked problems, and what they came down to conclude was that all of them come down to issues with power and corruption. And I thought that was fascinating because we're going to talk about power a lot in our unit, and I do have a lot of students tell me that corruption is a problem in their country, and certainly system corruption is a problem in my country, Australia. Anyway, think about it and see if you agree. In class, we had a discussion about, well, should humans be able to mine on the moon? It's a really, I brought up this question because I wanted to explore the idea of, are we being responsible with the resources we have, and should we go outside our hinterland and to another celestial body to get resources, and have we learned from our lack of ability to look after Earth? Would we look after the moon? Is it right for us to go to another celestial body and extract the resources? And we also would like to talk about who would control it, how would it be governed, what would the rights of the workers be like, would it actually be robots working on the moon? Interesting question that we discussed, and this is the kind of question that we would want to look at in our future sessions. And when you look at the news, to have a look at some of the things that come up, you think, oh, that's interesting, should we be able to do that or not? And then start asking those critical questions. What might happen? Who would benefit? Who wants to do this? Who would keep control of it? Is it fair? Is it a global good? And that's it for this week.